Hey, welcome to the Small Business Made Simple podcast, brought to you by socialmediaandmarketing.com.au. Being in business is never easy, but it can be simple, or at least simpler. Join me, your host Jen Donovan, every week where we focus on marketing, social media, and working towards simplifying your business. You with me? Let's do this.
If you're gonna dream it big, 'cause someone out there listening. Everyone's got a voice to give, and it's time I heard you whistling, 'cause there's no point at all, in dreaming small.
Why, hey there, my fabulous listener. Welcome to episode 253 of the Small Business Made Simple podcast. Thank you, as always, for lending me your ears today. I know you have lots of choices out there, and I do appreciate you making me one of them. If you're enjoying this podcast, I'd love you to take a screenshot and share it on your socials and tag me at Jen Donovan, because it would be super cool to be able to get to know you like you get to know me a little bit more by listening to this podcast every single week. Don't forget, anything that I mention, you can find the links to in the show notes at all the W's, socialmediaandmarketing.com.au/253. Now, have you had a chance to listen to last week's episode? Last week, I had Rosemary Sinclair on the podcast, who was from Outer. I personally found that one of the best conversations I've had on the podcast outside of small business owners and the amazing guests that I have. Really interesting. I hope that you've gone and signed up for Outer's newsletter. If you haven't listened to that podcast, then head back there, because there was just so much gold that Rosemary shared with us. Of course, you can find that at episode 252 of on any podcast that you listen to this, or you can go to the show notes and find the link as well. But definitely an episode to go back and have a listen to. Thank you so much for Outer and Rosemary for doing that podcast episode with me. But before I get started on today's podcast, I did want to give a shout out to this week's podcast sponsor, who is Kate Toon, and she has got a brand new book out, and it's called 6 Figures in School Hours. So here's Kate to tell you a little bit about that.
Hi, Kate Toon here, just jumping into Jen's podcast to tell you about my new book, 6 Figures in School Hours, How to Run a Successful Business and Still Be a Good Parent. It's packed with practical and doable tips for parents to be more productive, make serious money, and not burn themselves to a frazzle in the process, with actionable advice and inspiring stories to help you create a successful business and never feel like the worst parent in the world ever again. Order today at sixfiguresinSchoolhours.com.
Of course, the links to Kate's new book, 6 Figures in School Hours, are, of course, in the show notes, but you can go there at socialmediamarketing.com.au/253 and find it there. Otherwise, go to Kate Toon's website. So Kate Toon, KateToon.com, and you can find the book there as well. So back on episode 248, I did a mid-year check-in with you all around your goals for 2023. If you haven't listened to that episode, then head there and have a listen to that one. It was a few ago. But since that episode, I've had a few people reach out to me and say, hey, Jen, what about your word of the year? Are you still following your word of the year? Are you still in tune with your word of the year? So I thought I would make a podcast episode check-in basically around word of the year. For those playing along at home, my word of the year podcast episode was 224, and the word that I chose for 2023 was challenge. Although I will say I'm not very airy-fairy, but I will say that I think the words choose me. I don't actually choose my word of the year. I solely believe that it chooses me. So the word that chose me this year was challenge. Am I still in tune with my word of the year? Absolutely. How about you? Did you set one? How do you feel about yours? If you didn't set one, it's not too late. You can have a word of the second half of the year. But I can say that challenge was definitely the right year, the right word for me this year. And besides my husband, my marriage, and my children, which is pretty lucky for them, I have pretty much challenged everything about my life and about business this year. That's why I think the word chose me. It was time to challenge a lot. I've made some massive changes this year, such as writing a book. Yikes. Hopefully, by the time this episode goes live, I should have the second draft finished and it should be heading to the editors shortly. So that has been a massive project to take on. And I think the stars aligned for me to be able to do it this year. I've often thought I had a book inside me, but that again, challenging me myself to think about, well, what would the book really be? How, again, are you going to stand out from the crowd? There's a marketing book for every corner of every street of Australia. Why is yours going to be different? Why would people buy yours? And if you haven't been following along with my book writing, so my book is actually marketing your business in the country. So it's focused towards marketing your business if you're a rural, regional, or remote business owner, because there is nothing like that out there in the marketplace. So I've challenged myself to write the book and it's written, and hopefully at some stage you might be able to get it in your hot little hand. Other things that I've done because I have challenged myself is I've taken a giant step away from my e-commerce business. So spendwithus.com.au. I've taken a really big step away from that business to concentrate on my book and this business, my marketing business. I've cut people out of my life as I've challenged particular friendships. Now, I might know that that might seem really harsh, but when challenging certain friendships, I came to the conclusion that I was making all the effort. So I simply stopped making effort. If the friendship survives because they reach out, then that is wonderful. I will love that. But if not, I'm okay with that. I had to, challenge how I really felt about particular friendships. So we'll see where that lands. I have challenged what I sell in my business, and I'll be making big changes around that in the next 6 months, especially heading into 2024. But gosh, I think I've challenged almost all aspects of my life other than my kids and my husband, as I mentioned earlier. Has it been comfortable? No. Have there been tears? More than you can imagine, probably enough to fill Sydney Harbour. I don't know. Um, but do I feel more aligned with myself and who I want to be? Yeah, I really do. Change is never easy, but many, many moons ago, an amazing mentor wrote in a Christmas card to me, "Nothing changes if nothing changes." Like, clearly, he did not make that up because that is something that was probably profoundly written many years ago. But I've always been guided by that saying. And when I'm frustrated about my business or frustrated about anything, I guess it means that something has to change. And because, well, in a business sense, but even in my life, the buck stops with me. So if something's to change, there is no one else to change it. I need to embrace that and I need to change it myself. I remember having a social media post during the pandemic because lots of people were kind of, looking for third party help and outside help to help them. And I'm not talking about, them actually needing help, but it was a little bit like, save yourself. No one else is going to save you. Yeah, I'm not talking medical or health or anything like that, but I'm talking about, waiting for the next, I don't know, government handout or waiting for a Facebook group post to be the one that brings you in all those sales and things like that. Like looking for that third party person to save you, and no one else is going to do it. So, nothing changes if nothing changes. So sometimes change is what you actually have to do. Picking a word of the year, I feel that people think it's a nice activity to do, but as I said earlier, I really feel like the words that I choose actually choose me. But if you really embrace it and you really let the word come to you and you bring it to life, you bring it into your life, you bring it into your lifestyle, you bring it into your business, it can change your life. And I know that might sound huge, but I think about the words of the year that I have chosen over the last 5 or 6, and they have literally set me on a path that perhaps without that word, I wouldn't have gone on. So for me, it's just not a nice activity. It's actually a necessity, and a necessary activity for me to do each year to move closer to where I'm supposed to be, move closer to where I want to go. Of course, if you didn't pick a word of the year, you still can. It's not too late. And if you picked a word of the year that isn't serving you, you can change. This isn't a locked in contract. You can definitely change your word of the year. Challenging things is really hard work. All the changes that I've made have come over mulling over them, sometimes for months, sometimes for days, sometimes for hours. And although I love that I'm challenging things, I do believe that nothing should be made in haste. You shouldn't be making quick decisions if you are challenging things, because you need to through them strategically, especially if you're changing things to do with your business. I've often thought about the story, or really the fable, of the man drowning. And it's kind of like one of those stories that's really sticking with me this year. The story involves God, but if you don't believe in God, that's okay. The message, the moral behind the story is still the same. So stick with me. But the fable goes something like this: a man is drowning, and a swimmer swims by and asks if he needs help. And he says, "No, God will save me." And then a man in a canoe comes by and asks the same question and gets the same answer: "No, God will save me." And then a speedboat goes by and same. He's like, "No, no, I don't need saving. God will save me." Anyway, the man drowns and then he arrives in heaven and he asks God, "Why didn't you save me?" To which God replies, "I sent you a swimmer, a canoeist, and a boat. What more did you want?" And for me, that story has really stuck this year, I guess. The moral is that the signs you are being sent, are you ignoring them? Like, this man ignored the fact that he was sent, a swimmer and a canoeist and a speedboat. But that's what the story means to me. It means, what signs am I missing? What signs am I ignoring because I'm too busy thinking about something else, or that something else will save me? Sometimes I feel like it takes a slap in the face with a wet fish for me to see the signs that are all around me, begging me to do this or to do that or to change me. They're really obvious when you take time to see them. So my message to you is, don't wait for a wet fish to slap you across the face. Yeah, look out for the signs heading into the last half of this year. Maybe hijack my word of the year if challenge is something that would help you. If things need to change, then what do you need to challenge? Maybe you need to challenge some stuff to get moving this year, or maybe you need to challenge everything to get moving this year. So I appreciate that this episode sounds like it's all about me, but in reality, it's actually about you. It's about me asking you to step into who you want to be, to get the business you want and the business you so deserve to have, and to watch for the signs and take the challenge and look out for that wet fish that might be coming your way. I really hope this episode you will step back and give yourself that time. I know it's only a short little episode, but give yourself, maybe it normally goes for 20 minutes. Give yourself, 5 or 6 minutes now to think about what that could look like in your life. What do you need to do to step into who you want to be, who the future you is? What do you need to do to get the business you deserve and the business you want? What do you need to do to avoid the wet fish that's coming your way? If you're completely stuck and you feel like challenges are just too much at this point, then jump on a discovery call with me. Let's have a chat. Let's have a chat on how I can help you with your goals, your struggles, your roadblocks, what's holding you back. If I can't help you, then I'm bound to know somebody who can. So jumping on that discovery call could be the best thing you do. The link, of course, is in the show notes at socialmediamarketing.com.au/253. You can come and join my Facebook group, the Like Minded Business Owners Facebook group. The link to that is in the show notes as well, because I'd love to hear from you over there. But look, that's it for episode 253. I hope that this episode wasn't too far removed from what you normally hear from me. I know I'm normally about making small business simple, but I feel that New word of the year, challenging yourself, nothing changes if nothing changes, looking out for wet fish can all help you make your business life simpler. So, if you found this episode valuable or you loved it, I would love you to take 30 seconds out of your day and leave me a rating and review if you can do that where you are listening to this podcast. One of my goals this year, of course, is to reach more people with this podcast, and I would love for you to help me achieve that by leaving a review. Otherwise, I will see you next week on the podcast again for episode 254. Thanks again to Kate Toon and her new book, Six Figures in School Hours, for sponsoring the podcast. You can, of course, find that book by going to Kate Toon's website at katetoon.com and, yeah, buy the book, especially if you would like to make six figures in school hours. It's a great book. You will absolutely love it. But in the meantime, let's hang out on social and get social on social. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Jen Donovan. But whatever you do, remember, my small business peeps, as my opening song says, there is no point in dreaming small. I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, the Yorta Yorta people, on which I record this podcast and conduct my business today, and pay my respects to their elders, past and present. I extend this respect to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here with us today as well.